How are you?
Oh, wow.
I think these are the kites. I think it's just one person. How was London? Was the Abbey Road starter?
Before we begin our meeting this evening, would you please join us as Mr. Thompson leads us in prayer? Thank you.
Father, we're grateful for spring. Although it hasn't felt like spring, we look forward with anticipation of you giving us a good spring and the newness of your creation every year. Thank you for our students here, and we enjoy their success as we celebrate several of them tonight, and just pray your blessing on them. In Christ's name.
Amen. And as always, we like to begin it with the recognitions. So Dr. Glendenning.
All right, thank you. I think I'm on. Can you get a tribute? Like, am I on? Thank you, okay. There are several students that are exemplars in their chosen athletic and academic programs, and so we'd like to recognize them, and so I'll pass it over to Mrs. Brown-Nally, and she'll introduce them.
We will get started tonight recognizing Chloe Dublin. Chloe came out victorious in her first professional competition at the Pro American Powerlifting Championship. Come on up, Chloe. Chloe went 9 for 9 on all her attempts, did not miss a single lift, weighing in at 158 pounds. She squatted 396 pounds, this little thing over here, I know, which was a new unofficial world record for girls aged 23 years old and under. She bench pressed 248 pounds at the meet and touched her bar as it was moving up before a judge signaled to do so, right?
Yeah. So I had like a free lift. So if any of the spotters interfere with your lift and they think that like you could have gotten it otherwise, then you can go to like the judges and petition for a relift. So I basically had to do my last attempt twice, which is pretty tough, but I got it. It's good.
And it says here the crowd went crazy.
It was
Awesome. Deadlift of 451 pounds. The total new unofficial world record. Chloe now has the highest total in the world for girls aged 23 and under in the weight class of 158 pounds. Congratulations.
And before we get started, we're going to watch Chloe lift.
Okay, Chloe Dublin is at the 205 kilos.
All right, Chief Referee says the card is ready for Chloe Dublin. Here's your gold medal winner.
I have no idea.
No, before you're not good yet. We have to get a picture, but also you're a senior, so tell us what you're going to be doing next year, and also introduce your mom there in the back.
That's my mom. Her name's Michelle. And also,
Is it on?
that's okay. Also, I'm going to Midland University in Nebraska. I'm on a powerlifting scholarship, and it's Hartman would want me to tell you this, so I'm going to tell you. It's the largest that they've ever given out in powerlifting history, so that's pretty cool. It's almost $30,000. I'm really excited about it. So, yeah.
Well
I'm studying
done.
biology. So.
Well done. Let's get a picture. Let's get a picture. That's all right. Afterwards, she'll have autographs out here, so. Great job, Chloe.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
We next like to recognize our senior athletes. I guess, I'm not sure they're all seniors or not, but they have signed national letters of intent to play athletics at the next level. Avery Otten from Franklin College will play golf. Logan Snyder will be playing tennis at Concordia University, Wisconsin. And Matt Jordan will be playing golf at Vincennes University.
Here, we're gonna.
Congratulations to these athletes.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna have you talk a little bit about your college you're gonna go to, and then what you're gonna study, and also introduce your parents if they're here tonight. So.
Well, my parents are over here in the front row, Rod Snyder and Jill Snyder.
Hey, we're still looking for a tennis coach, by the way.
I heard the last one resigned.
He left with me, so. Well, I'm going to Concordia University, Wisconsin, which is in Mequon, Wisconsin, 20 minutes north of Milwaukee. I'm planning on studying exercise physiology with a business minor.
My name is Avery, and my mom's right there, Rhonda Otten. And I'm going to Franklin College, so I'm staying in town. And I'm double majoring in sociology and business management. And I'm also going to Franklin on a scholarship I won called the Lilly Endowment, so I'm really excited about that. Got my tuition paid.
And she also co-chaired Dance Marathon this weekend. And how much did you guys raise this weekend?
15,000 something.
15,000 some. So congratulations. All right, let's get a picture here. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Next, we'd like to recognize student athletes for their academic success in addition to their athletic success. Chandler Mills was named the first team academic All-State as a junior as a wrestler. Tristan Sutton was also named as honorable mention academic All-State.
And Eagle Scout.
In addition, Chandler also has earned his Eagle Scout by leading about 20 other scouts in the process of building and installing 4 4x4 raised gardens at the Boys and Girls Club of Franklin. The whole process took about 2 months, including all the paperwork. Eagle Scout is the highest ranking in Boy Scout and involves earning 21 merit badges. Congratulations.
So do you take on Coach Hossman in math competition as well?
Oh, no.
Okay. Congratulations on your endeavor. Talk a little about where you're headed next year and also about your Eagle Scout project.
All right, well, first I'll introduce my parents. I have Kim and Jason Mills in the back there. And I'm going to ISU next year to double major in criminology and psychology. And I guess in regards to Eagle, I guess the one thing I learned is like the easiest way to lead someone is not by like demanding that something be done, but more of suggestion and just like leading along with them and teaching and learning. So thank you.
All right. Early picture here. Congratulations.
Once again this year, the Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America were well represented and achieved at a high level at the State Leadership Conference. 800 students attended the conference with 600 competing in ProStart, state projects, and STAR events. Through these projects, students prepare for their future careers and perfect their presentation skills, including organization and public speaking. We would like to recognize Olivia Carlisle, who received a gold in Focus on the Basics, Josie Arney, who received a gold in Focus on the Basics, and Doan Pham, silver, and students taking action with recognition and qualified to compete at nationals in Atlanta this summer. Congratulations.
So please introduce your parents and also talk about your project.
Hi, so my name is Don Pham, and I came with my mom, Amy, and my brother, Tim, and my project is Oh, it's leadership. Sorry, that took a second. But basically, I evaluate my leadership skills, create SMART goals to work on it, and evaluate afterwards.
Hi, I'm Josie, and I have my mom, Sadie, in second row. And I did focus on the basics, which I basically learned more about FCCLA and how it originated.
Congratulations. You want to come up and get a picture with us? You sure? Okay. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Then lastly, tonight, we'd like to recognize Isaac Grass, who is the Central 9 Student of the Month for HVAC. I don't see Isaac here, but we'll make sure we get him his certificate. That's it.
You're more than welcome to stay for the rest of tonight's meeting. But if not, this will be a good time to exit.
Yeah, so used to sit back.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yes, I.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is for the public and board comments. The comments for the public would be for anything that's on the agenda and limited to 2 minutes. So would any of the folks from the public like to speak? Seeing none?
We have one. Matt's got something just to check quickly on an item.
Tonight under the consent agenda is the MetroNet contract. And this is hopefully the first of many benefits of the collaboration between the school system and the city for IT support. This contract was already accepted. The MetroNet contract portion for the city was already accepted by the city, and they'll save about $7,000 because of the collaboration, whereas we'll save about $10,000. The collaboration, MetroNet was able to respond to our request for proposal over time based on the savings between collaboration and the way we're going to do the internet connection over the contract of us working with the city will save approximately $90,000. So I'm going to provide some background on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, for the board comments, the first item up is Music Council.
We have not met recently, but there have been some, I can't remember since, did the choirs win the state championship after our last board meeting? So Heritage Singers and Sensations were state champions in their respective classes at the Isthmus State Show Choir Championship. I do know that the drum corps did participate this weekend, and I don't know how they did, but 15th. So I think their first trip to the state championship, from what I understand. So, but other than that, we have not met as a council.
Okay, thank you. Athletic Council.
We did not meet this month. We'd like to share that on Monday, April the 23rd, is the annual sports physical here on the sports end of the building. So that's a great opportunity for all the athletes to come in. It's only $20 for each of the athletes to come in and get their physical for the year. It's probably a lot cheaper than you can go to your family doctor and do that. So mark the calendar, April 23rd. It's from 5:30 to 7 here in the high school.
Okay, thank you. Legislative Council.
The only thing to report, Governor Holcomb is going to call the General Assembly back in session in a few weeks to deal with school safety. What they're saying is going to be a probably 2 or 3 day. Mr. Young knows a few more things than I do about that, but I do know they're going to call the General Assembly back to deal with that one item.
Yeah, that's really all I know. I don't know when. I know they want to make it as short as possible. So we'll see what they can get done.
Okay, thank you. Superintendent Strategic Task Force.
No report.
Okay, the Superintendent Strategic Plan Projects.
We will be talking about the collaboration project coming up. Mr. Mercer, anything else at this time?
No. Okay, thank you. The Communication Committee.
We did not meet, but later in the meeting, Dr. Clendenning and Mrs. Betts are going to talk about thought exchange, which is something we've been working on, Communication Committee. So.
Okay, thank you. Next item is for the collective bargaining.
Did not meet.
Okay, the next two items are mine, Central Line and RDC, and I have been recovering from surgery, so I have nothing to report there. The next item on the agenda is for the consent agenda. Do I hear a motion?
Move to approve.
Okay, it's been moved for approval. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Mr. Vaught, we do have two retirees on this consent agenda. Deb Stubberman is going to retire from Needham Elementary. She's been at all the elementaries, she told me, except Webb, and she just praised her time with us. And Karen Friend is also going to retire from Northwood and Custer Baker Intermediate School. So I want to just thank them for the years of service, two outstanding members of our team.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is under superintendent reports. Dr. Clendenning.
Thank you. We have two people that can share their journey on their 10X. First up will be Deb Robbins, school nurse at Creekside Elementary, talking about a trip to Northern Indiana. And then following, Mr. Kirby is going to come up and share his 10X project on technology.
Okay. I hope everybody can hear me. Don't do that yet. We have a code, he and I. So my 10X grant was how to experience the Amish country in 1 week, or two sisters in their 60s among the Indiana Amish. Next slide. And the reason that I chose to spend a week in the Amish country is because I've lived in Indiana for almost all my life, and I've always been intrigued by the Amish lifestyle. I knew a little bit about it, but not very much, and I didn't know that 19% of the Amish community in our nation reside right in northern Indiana. My goal was to find out facts about their community, what formed their beliefs, and how they lived the so-called simple life. And I put this first picture in because I don't know if you've ever been up in the Amish country, especially on a Monday. Everybody has their laundry out on a clothesline, and it all looks like this. And you go down miles and miles and miles and miles of nothing but Amish clothing out there. So it was kind of a neat thing, really, for me. And I said to my sister, look at all those people who have their clothes out on the line. Next. While we were on our trip, we were able to sit in the living room of an Amish bishop and his wife. And we were able to talk to them and ask them some questions. We discovered that when they were parents of 16 children, 95 grandchildren, and 96 great-grandchildren. That's a big Amish family. We also learned that when the Amish children reach the age of 16, they have the option of experiencing something called Rumspringa. And that means that they can experience the world outside the Amish community. This is before they go in or baptized into the Amish church. Some of them decide not to return, and a lot of them, though, do return, and they do get baptized into the Amish church. The Amish community is centered around the church, which consists of 40 families. They're also known as a district. And go ahead. Some of the things that we asked the bishop about the Amish people are a lot of myths that people didn't think were or thought were true about the Amish. But one of the things was the Amish do pay taxes. They pay property and income tax. My mouth is really dry, I'm sorry. Their medical cost is kind of interesting. They are on a shared program. Each family donates a certain amount of money that is determined by the deacons. And the Amish don't participate in Medicare or Medicaid. Some of the Amish believe in immunizations, others don't. It depends on the district. The Amish also have the option of going to a medical doctor, which I thought was interesting, or they can also go to a naturopathic or Amish healer. Most of them opt to do that. We also had the privilege of visiting an old order Amish teacher. He taught in a one-room schoolhouse, and so we were able to ask him, okay, so did you go to college? Did you get a teaching license? And he said, no, he didn't. What happened was the bishop and another member of the community, they approach a candidate when they want them to teach in their community. And so they're not required to have a license, and they're also not required to get a college degree. Usually, it's a girl that's 16 years of age that they ask to be the school teacher. She's usually unmarried, and they also include her parents in that decision. He was there for 16 years, and he teaches grades 1 through 8. And what they do is they have a curtain, they have a big schoolroom, and then they have a curtain that they slide across, that the boys are on one side and the girls are on the other side. Kind of like that they are in their church whenever they have church. The teacher's salary is paid through the parents of the district. And remember, I said that there were 40 families in each district. And in this particular community, they have 181 districts. So that's like 7,200 parents and all their kids. And now you know why there's 19% Amish in the northern part of Indiana. The Amish school year consists of 167 days of school, which I thought would be great for us. And then they said, but you have to reach that 97% attendance rate to get that, which we don't have right now. So, but they went into an agreement with the state of Indiana about that because of their holidays and things like that. The other thing is that students usually only go until about 8th grade. And then they usually start working in the home or on the farm. There's been a few of them that have gone on to high school, and some have gone on to college. I thought it was real interesting too that 90% of the Amish kids in elementary school go to the public elementary school. And the reason I think is because the parents are required to provide transportation. And if you've been up to northern Indiana, the farms are kind of far away from this schoolhouse. And so they provide to and from transportation, and it's not a car, it's usually a buggy. And they also have to pay for their students to go to the Amish school. Next one, please. You can skip that one. This is a picture of the schoolhouse that we went to. And it's kind of funny because they don't have an inside toilet, they have an outside toilet, and they also have a phone shack. There's no electricity in the building whatsoever, but they have a phone shack. And I thought it was really kind of interesting that they had a cord running from that phone shack all the way to the telephone line. They never covered it up. Okay. We also had the opportunity of going to a wedding reception for the Amish, and that was really interesting. We met with a mother whose name was Rose Stolholtz, and her daughter got married in June. This was actually the third daughter out of 7 that they had. 1 son and 7 daughters that got married, and she planned the wedding. And it's a big community event. It begins with the colors that the bride has selected for her wedding. And we found out that her wedding dress doesn't have to be white. It can be any color that she chose. And then invitations before any of the invitations for the wedding are actually sent out. Invitations are sent to the cooks with a little color swatch that the bride has picked out. And it's considered an honor to be asked to be a cook at the wedding. And it's even a bigger honor if you're asked to be the head cook. The cooks make their own dresses, and they make them the color of the swatch. And it's kind of funny, but the color that they have, if you have somebody who's blue, they do all the meat. You have somebody who does green, they do all the vegetables. Somebody who does lavender, they do all the desserts. It's kind of neat the way they have it done. They have it down into a pretty fine system. And the bride also makes her own wedding dress, which can be, like I said, any color that she chooses. And then she also chooses what her attendants wear. And all of those dresses are the same style. They don't vary. All of her attendants look just like the next one. And the interesting side note here that we found out is that the bride wears her dress on her wedding day, and then she puts that dress up, and then she's buried in that dress. And somebody asked me, okay, well, what if she gains a lot of weight? And I said, well, they rip that dress in 2 in the back, and they put it over and she's buried in that dress. Next slide. This particular wedding reception that we were able to find out about, they have an average. She sent out actually 1,400 invitations, and 1,200 responded. And they had 1,200 guests at meal times. And I put this picture here because this picture shows the preparation wagons that they had. They had one for refrigeration, and they had one for doing all the cooking. The one for all the cooking had 4 stoves in it, and then the one with the refrigeration had a huge refrigerator, and they're all run by propane. But on the invitation at the bottom, they list the meal time: 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock. And then that's what time you come and celebrate with the bride and the groom. So the bride and the groom will have 4 different meals, and then 4 different sets of people who come and celebrate with them. And all of the tableware, the silverware, the crystal, and everything is all provided whenever you rent one of these wagons. The reception is a all-day affair. It goes clear into the early morning, and usually we found out that this 7 o'clock meal is for the young people, because apparently the Amish people like to sing a lot, and they sing in German. They sing lots of hymns. And the younger people, that's what they do. They sing all the time. And at these wedding receptions, they sing clear into the night. Sometimes it's like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning before they even break up. So, next one, please. I was able to share this experience with my sister Pat. It made me realize I knew that family was important. We have a big family, and we always have family gatherings, and it just reiterated that family is very important. And the benefit of being part of a community is just indescribable. it also gave me an opportunity to see how a different culture is, and their differences are something that we like to respect, you know. It makes me appreciate that our Franklin school system here has an approach for putting students first and for taking them from good to great. And then the last slide, the reason that my sister and I went, the reason I wrote the grant was because I found out that they had the Heritage Quilt Garden Trail going on. And that took you to Bristol, Elkhart, Goshen, Middlebury, Napanee, Shipshewana, and Wakarusa. And we were able to spend 3 days and go through and observe 19 quilt gardens, 22 murals, and then in honor of their 10th anniversary, we were able to find in every one of these little towns 57 Seward Johnson sculptures that were placed in strategic places around the towns. And if you ever take it to northern Indiana, this goes on every year, these quilt gardens, and this year is the same. The only thing they won't have are the Seward Johnson sculptures. But I advise you to take a couple of days and go up into the northern Amish country. It's an incredible experience. And you can go to the website at www.amishcountry.org and see the murals and where they're at. And it's kind of like a scavenger hunt. And it'll give you some great family time. And it'll also teach you a lot of history about the Amish people who live in our northern part of Indiana. Thank you.
Come on, Deb, you got questions? Oh, maybe we have some questions for you. Yeah. Bobby was supposed to prep you for that.
Oh, wait, no, you said 3 to 5 minutes.
That's okay. Do you have any questions?
I'm fascinated by it, Amish, and I find it very intriguing. How did you make the arrangements with them?
Well,
it seems that
we met a guy.
Okay.
This is no joke. We met a guy.
Okay.
His name was Alan. And he did these behind-the-scenes Amish tours. Okay. He actually was a retired pastor from Connorsville, one of the Baptist churches in Connorsville, and he and his wife moved up to the Amish country about 5 or 6 years ago. And even though the Amish are a very tight-knit community, they all are very, very friendly, and they, especially with pastors. And so he asked us, would you guys like to go on a tour? And, well, my sister and I said, well, of course we would. So we did. And this was the great part about that tour. We were the only two that night. They had a busload the night before, but my sister and I were the only two that night that got to go and sit with the Amish bishop and his wife. And we were so intrigued by being able to spend about an hour and a half with him and being able to ask him all kinds of questions. And it was just a really neat experience. I will say also on this tour, besides the wedding reception and the one-room schoolhouse, we also met a couple named the Millers who own a basket business. He's a woodworker and his wife does baskets, and they have a company called Teaberry Farms. They were Amish. They were very, very against their sons. They had 3 sons going through Rumspringa. They didn't want their kids out into the world because they just didn't feel like that was a good thing for their kids. And so they went to their district leaders and they decided to leave the Amish church and become Mennonites, which is kind of a branch from, but the Mennonites do not believe in doing the Rumspringa. And they were actually shunned for 6 months in their community. They could not buy things from their people. They could not sell things to their people. They could not even talk to their people. It really is true. Whenever they decide to shun you, they do shun you. this particular family, they really thought a lot of them, and their own Amish congregation thought a lot of them, that they ended up lifting that shun in 6 months. And they actually, it's kind of funny because they're so down to earth and so nice, but you can Google them and you can find them on Facebook, and they make amazing baskets out of wood and everything. Any more questions?
The Quill Gardens along the Heritage Trail.
Yeah.
You said that is one time a year?
It's one time a year, and it starts in
I'm
May.
asking for a friend.
And goes, it starts in May and it goes through October. And some of these, I know, when you say 3 to 7 minutes, you know, when I first started my presentation, I was like, well, this is going to take up the whole hour and a half or whatever. I had picture after picture after picture, but they are so amazing.
Yeah.
They're just like a quilt that the Amish people would make, and they use all these different flowers and plants and make the design up. It's incredible. And besides that, the Pumpkin Vine Trail is one of the most incredible trails. If you like riding a bicycle, Dr. Clendenning, and I know you do, you need to go up there.
I have been on that trail.
It is incredible, isn't it?
Yeah. I lived in Goshen for 15 years.
There you go.
So, yeah, it's a very
all these little towns are so great. They all have their own unique parts to them, and boy, they really, it's worth taking a trip up there to the northern part of Indiana.
And I would say amen to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next presentation is Doug Kirby.
Hello. Before I get started, I would like to tell everybody thank you. And not just for me, but it's really neat that you do this sort of thing for teachers. And it's really neat that you do this sort of thing for support staff and for the upcoming students that you're getting ready to look into. So thank you very much. Jeff Bright's up next. He asked me to kind of make it a little bit longer, so I've got about 763 pictures to go through. Yeah, technology is not my thing. So my trip, I decided to go to Silicon Valley and do some things in the San Francisco area. I'd never really spent a whole lot of time there. I'd always wanted to see the redwoods. I'd always wanted to see Alcatraz, so that's what we decided to do. This is our flight, took 4 hours and 55 minutes. I took my youngest daughter, Samantha Kirby. She went with us. It was a great little trip for the two of us to take together, and we really, really had a good time. One of the things that we did was we went to Google, and we had one of their employees, they met us there, and they took us a tour through the facilities.
Hey, Doc.
Well, you're right. What's going on here? What'd you do, Matt? One thing, driving around campus, they had the little Google map marker, and I don't know if anybody happened to be in downtown Franklin over the weekend, but I think they stole the idea from us. This is really neat. They had this is an 8-person bike. If they want to get some exercise and they're in the middle of a meeting, 8 people can load up on this bike and they can ride around campus. They also had a lot of just regular bikes all over the place. If they needed to go from building to building or just wanted to get some exercise, they could just hop on a bike and take it to wherever and just leave it there.
Yeah, that's a cute little bike.
So when we were on campus, they have outside, they have tables and chairs if you want to take your meeting outside. There's a volleyball court out there, just all kinds of really, really neat little things to do and be out in the sunshine, get some work done at the same time. Another thing that we did was we went to the Computer History Museum, and I'm going to get a little geeky here for just a few minutes if you don't mind. This I thought was really neat. This is called the ENIAC. I'm not sure if anybody's ever heard of that. It's named the Electronic Numerical Integrator and Calculator. This was built in 1943 to 1945, and it was initially built to help figure ballistic trajectories for World War II. By the time they got the thing done, the war was over. This was very, very top secret, cost $400,000. This stored no memory whatsoever, had no moving parts. It could calculate a trajectory in 30 seconds that would have normally taken humans about 20 hours to figure at that time. This is it's a vacuum tube. The computer itself had 18,000 vacuum tubes. And I don't know if you know much about computers, but this is either a 1 or a 0 when it comes to computer language. So like I said, there was 18,000 of those that ran this. There would be about 4 or 5 that would blow throughout the day. So they would need to make several test runs to make sure that they were coming up with the same answer to verify that they had no blown vacuums when they did that. And this is what the room would look like altogether. There were a number of different units that separated the room. It was in Philadelphia, and when they powered it up, the entire town dimmed a little bit, all the electricity that was going to it to power it. This piece right here, this is called it's a RAMEC 350. This was the very first disk drive. This was used from 1956 to 1969. This had a memory of 5 million characters or 5 megabytes. They had 50 24-inch disks that were 100 kilobytes each, and it ran at a blazing 10 kilobytes per second input-output. Sold for $200,000, and today you can comparative, you can buy a 1 terabyte hard drive for less than $50. Mm-hmm. And that's what it'll look like. It stood about this high. Other things that they had a whole bunch of stuff, but this is just kind of the first generation Amazon. If anybody remembers that. Driving around, we happened by this house. In this garage, something famous happened. Mm-hmm. And yes, this is the birthplace of Apple. This is Steve Jobs' house where he initially lived. Oh, Google took over my slides and decided to make a commentary. We also went to an Intel museum. This is a free museum in their main Intel headquarters. Really gave Samantha an opportunity to see how the progression of processors had changed over the years. And then, so there's the geeky stuff over with. We visited Stanford, and that was a really, really neat campus. She and I drove out of the country. This particular day, you can see it's really hazy in the background and really hazy over the bay. There were areas that we could not go to because we were there during the fires last fall. We went up to Muir Woods, the Redwood Forest, which is just north of San Francisco, and we really could not go any further north than that. This is the Redwood Forest, and again, this is something that I'd always kind of wanted to see. And just some random pictures of some different redwood trees. And this particular one, the funny thing is, my mother went there when she was a teenager, and she has a picture of this exact same thing. But the middle of the tree, if you can tell right here, the tree was born in 909 AD. So these suckers are old. I took this just kind of a picture of perspective because the redwood forest is down here. And from up on the hill, they look like regular sized trees. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Got some good Golden Gate Bridge photos. Sammy and I just had a really, really good time. This is Lombard Street in San Francisco. This is the curviest street in the world, is what they say. We also, I don't know if any of you have some small ones that may recognize this. These are called the Painted Ladies in San Francisco. As you might know from the beginning of the Full House TV show. I never really saw any of those. And another thing that I'd always wanted to go to, and I've never had a chance, is to go out to Alcatraz, and this gave me that opportunity to do that. So we went out and we spent a day out at Alcatraz. You take a ferry out there, and it has an audio tour that you go walk around with. I took this picture to give you a feeling of how small these cells were. This is a single bed. This side of the bed was literally right up against the bars, and the other side, if they had the bed out, it covered part of the toilet over there. So it's very, very, very small. And then this kind of gives you a perspective of what the cells look like. There's three floors of cells. There's 3 different rows. I was surprised at how small Alcatraz really is. And then this, I'm sure you've heard the story about the 3 men who escaped, never got found, and they're not sure if they lived or died, but this is one of their cells. This was the fake head they had in one of the beds, and this is how they got out of their cells. And back behind where they got out, this is what it looked like back behind. So that hole was literally right here, and then they used these pipes to climb up onto the roof. And I took this just so you can see, this is how far away from San Francisco it is. It's really pretty close, but close and yet so far. And then just another little picture here. You may have gotten a peek at my next picture, but the one thing that Samantha was really excited to go to when we were out there was the In-N-Out Burger. So that, in a nutshell, was my trip. And again, I really appreciate the opportunity, and I really appreciate not only for myself, but the opportunity for everybody to have that chance to do something. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the energy update, Mr. Bright.
This is the 2017 cost avoidance and utility data. I did something a little different for this presentation. We don't normally talk about. You may or may not know, the only building we have in the corporation that is set up with separate water meters is this building right here. The rest of them have generally one water meter. So does that matter? Well, yes, because the sewer bill is figured by how many gallons of water we used on the water meter. So when you got athletic fields and cooling towers and things of that nature, you're basically getting charged for something you didn't use. So DPW allows us, we set up our own meters on these devices, the irrigation systems and things like that. And I figure that up every month and to do all the math and take it to them, and they allow us to deduct that from our bill. So I thought, since it was our 5 years since we started our current energy program, in the past 5 years, we've written off 8 million gallons of water for $24,734, almost $5,000 a year, just in sewer stuff that we write off. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing to share at the 5-year mark. Next slide is a snapshot of our corporation utilities. They figure it in kilobtu, which is long and drawn out, but the bottom line is we were up a little bit in natural gas, very small amount, but our electrical usage was down, so that's encouraging. This particular slide is our electric usage, which is very encouraging. As you can see, we were 1.1 million kilowatt hours down from 2016, which is very good. There is a little bit of skewed data on here. If you notice, the IT, or information technology, is what it's labeled as on here. We did some meter swapping around there so that the admin building and food service could be on the generator. So if you add those two meters together, we still saved there. So it worked out pretty well. The next one is our natural gas usage, which was actually up a little bit, but most of our buildings are heated primarily by natural gas heating water. So when the weather is bad, it shows up there as much as anywhere. But we're still far better than we were when we started back in the 2013 range. So still on the right track. Now, 5-year cost comparison is what really proof is in the pudding here. We're $15,000 ahead of what we were in 2016. So we did gain a little bit on that. Encouraging, I'll back up just a little bit. Encouraging on the electricity, if you notice the high school here, which has been kind of a bugaboo as far as energy usage, is actually responsible for almost 700,000 kilowatt hours saved. So back to the cost comparison, they were 41,000 to the good for this year. So really encouraging that we're getting on the right track up here at this building. Executive cost profile, which is a lot of the same data, but in a graph form. As you can see, 17, there's a few months where we creep up above years past, but 6 of the 12 months are still our best year to date for that represented month. So still encouraging, still moving in the right direction. And if you added our baseline year of 2012, if we'd have continued on that path for 13 through 17, we would have spent $9,412,000. But since we put our energy program in place, we've actually spent $7,825,000 for a total savings of $1.58 million or $317,000 per year. So, and over these 5 years, we've changed some gym lighting to T5 fluorescent or LED. We've changed some parking lot lighting here and there to LED, but most of the savings have been created by reducing HVAC and lighting run times. I think changing from primarily desktop computers to the Chromebooks has been a huge savings. We haven't really talked about that before, and I don't know if that was part of the thing, but that's really been big. But huge part of that is the diligence of the staff by changing their usage habits, computers, lighting, just everything, So hats off to everybody. It's still going strong. With that being said, our last 3 years have been hovering around the 1.5 million mark. So this kind of seems to be our plateau. Moving forward, larger LED lighting changeouts, more efficient HVAC, things of that nature could keep us on the level and maybe even dive us a little lower. A lot of the articles I read, a lot of school corporations, when they want to save money, they spend a lot of money to do it. They initially upfront invest in expensive equipment to do it. We really haven't done much of that. So it's even more encouraging what we've been able to do just by simply altering our lifestyle a little bit. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thanks. Next item is the corporation financial report. Mr. Mercer.
You have the financial statement for the first 3 months of the year in front of you. No real highlights. Would point out, I guess, just a couple items. We are tracking about where we thought we would be tracking. In fact, capital projects is probably running a little bit ahead of where we were this time last year. You might note, too, Cub Care, Cub Academy, Cub Quest retained earnings through our first almost 3 years in most of those programs. Transportation continues to be an issue for us, as it always has been, or at least for the last 6 or 7 years, probably will continue to be. But things are going well. Would be happy to answer any questions you might have, if there are any.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next item is JCP all-year review.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for giving us a few moments. I'm Lisa Littner, the Library Director for the Johnson County Public Library, and we have Tiffany Wilson right back there. She's our branch manager at the Franklin branch, and we brought one of our board members that you have appointed, Kirk Bixler, and he's going to share a little bit about our past year.
Okay, let me start off by saying that if you did not know that, Lisa sent out information today that this is National Library Week, so visit your libraries. This year, patrons at Johnson County Public Library have checked out more than 1 million items from our 4 branch locations and from our website. About 86% of that million were items that were sitting on our shelves in the library, and then the other 14% were items that were downloaded or streamed from the library's website. The library launched many new programs and initiatives in 2017. First was the 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten. Nearly 600 kids have registered to read 1,000 books before they enter kindergarten to ensure educational success and develop a love of reading. And 8 young children have met their 1,000 book goal already. We built 2 new story walks, one at Trafalgar and then at Country Gate Park in New Whiteland. And then we have one other planned in Bargersville Town to open in May. These engage families to spend time outdoors, learning, and then also reading together. In 2017, we had 4 best-selling and award-winning authors to Johnson County Public Library, and we have 5 scheduled for this year. Libraries aren't just books. You can check out things like ukuleles, board games. We also have Idle-Jordan museum passes and then some other passes. We've also helped several residents in Johnson County who experience color blindness to see red and green colors for the first time in their lives by checking out our Enchroma glasses. And then also we've added things like music lessons, foreign language classes, and tumble blocks online as well.
And we just want to share some of the exciting things happening this year. We're going to have birding backpacks where a family can check out a backpack that'll have 2 children's binoculars and an adult binoculars and Birds of Indiana books and activities to do. I'm so excited. It's going to be so much fun. We're also going to be circulating something called Starling devices, which is sort of it's like a pedometer only for words instead of steps. And you kind of clip it on a young child, and a caregiver can find out how many words they're speaking to their child and find out if they need to speak more to them. We're also going to be circulating mobile hotspots, which will help a person who doesn't have internet at home, or if they live in a rural part of our county and are unable to get broadband or Wi-Fi there, this will be able to help them out. So that'll be coming in 2018. Also, we're working with Deb and the school system to give all the students at Franklin Community Schools a SMART account where they have access to our online databases, and we'll be working with that probably next fall. And ensuring your kids have lots of access to all of our great online resources. And we're just here to serve the families and students of Johnson County. And if you have any questions about the library, we're happy to answer them.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is under action items, the collaboration project. Dr. Clendenning.
Thank you, Mr. Vaught and School Board. As you know, we've been traveling the last several months looking at a Six Sigma project for release time in our school. We have tried for 9 years to create time for teachers to grow together. We know the most important factor in a child's development in the classroom, K-12, are great teachers. We have great teachers. They just need time to talk together. Through the maestro of our principals, they've created that time, but never allowed us to connect in a way that we felt that it wasn't being distracted for one reason or the other. So with that, we took on a collaboration project. You could see all the members of the team that were part of the journey, as well as you're going to hear over 1,000 people participated in our study. So I'll introduce the team members, and then we're going to go through the slides, and we'll come back with the final aha. So here we have Becky Hart. Becky's an English teacher here at the high school, and she was actually the expert, as they've already had the early release, late arrival for us, and so she provided input. Heather Kepner, FCTA president, but also kindergarten at Northwood. Missy Jones, represented CBIS, and she is a literacy teacher there, and she had a lot of good insight on what's going on, because one of the things we talked about in that journey is CBIS actually has a very long day when you coin it in terms of an elementary school, which is what they're listed as through the states. We talked about that. Cindy Mappus, assistant principal, Dylan Purley, Needham elementary principal, Dr. Hayden, Creekside, Rita Holman, middle school principal, Will Norton, also a member of the executive team for FCTA, fourth grade teacher at Northwood, and then Mr. Sewell coming on board to continue to experience our project structure and strategies to see what we're doing, and then myself. So with that, we'll start. I'll run the clicker, and we each have a little ditty to say, if you will. My first up is why we do this, and that was to create common collaboration time. One of the interesting things in our journey, the word common played a significant part in our study. And you're going to see that in our project charter. But one thing we originally thought was common would be for everybody at the exact same time. Because of logistics and some other things, that's not possible in our district. So we came up with a different interpretation of common you'll hear about. Project tracker. One of the things that Jeff and I did together is kind of keep track of the notes and everything. So Jeff put this together so you can see that we began the journey in November, and the original intent was to finish in February. But as we got going through the data and using our resources, we realized we needed more time to come up with the best answer for our district. Looking at the 50,000 foot level, we had two significant inputs, and that was the schedule and logistics. So busing and make sure our kids met the required amount of time. And then how are we going to measure our success? Student growth, looking at NWA, and teacher professional development, which is really the key and driving force for us. Here are the collaboration tools that we used. On Friday, we did meet for a project review with our experts, and we shared this presentation with them ahead of time, and so they were able to see kind of the things that we use. We did use a project charter, which you're going to see in just a few moments. Voice of the customer, we surveyed parents, we surveyed community teachers. You'll see that in a second. We did a Pew diagram to come up with the best answer for us based on the factors, FMEA, and then the control and action plan. The charter that we have looked at the situation, and I just described that to you earlier, why we needed it. And the whole key is to create time. 45 minutes for our teachers to be collaborating, looking at those 4 questions that drive us at professional learning community. And the significant thing is kids won't be in the buildings during that time. Or if they are, they'll be in a very restricted area with supervision. And here are the 3 parts that we have to bring to you today. That's looking at supervision issues, also making sure that we did have input from our stakeholders. We're going to hear about that in a second. And then looking at our PLC time. So voice the customer.
All right. We as a committee, first of all, we knew that even though this is just one day's change of 45 minutes, that it was going to impact a wide range of stakeholders. So we wanted to make sure we identified who those stakeholders were listed above and make sure we got input from each of them, because we felt that even though we were trying to punch holes in this as many times as we could to make sure we hit everything, that we might not see something that a parent sees or someone in the community or a teacher that's in a different building than us. So we surveyed each one of these areas and wanted to make sure that we got some good data and feedback from them, but also had a comment section where they could provide us specific examples of how this would affect them.
And the 2 slides that I'm going to talk about have to deal with the community. We did several other questions, but these were the ones that really came back with a lot of impact. We had about 950 replies back. Most of those, the 400, were at the high school and at the elementary level. So both ends of the spectrum, our youngest families and our oldest kids' families really gave us a lot of information. We had about 250 from Custer Baker and about 300 from the middle school. The main question we really needed to figure out what day was going to work best for everyone. And we took Monday and Friday off the table just from the beginning because of a lot of reasons, but we have a lot of vacation time that we have one day of the week, and it is either usually a Monday or a Friday that we have off. So that would have put a little bit of a different spin on it. And overwhelmingly, it came back Wednesday for both faculty, staff, bus, and community. So Wednesday was the day that we knew we were going to have to work with from the beginning.
Sorry. Okay, we had 200 teachers, which that was pretty good because I think we have about 300 plus. But so we had a good variety, and Wednesday, 84% came back. So that kind of was a no-brainer for us. And I know at CBIS we've struggled all year to meet as a staff. Students get there very early, and with some changes we've had with our transportation this year, it's working great now, but it took us a little while to work it out. But we're excited that we have staff time together every week.
On a Finney diagram, Mr.
So the data, yeah, I'm a little short. The data that you're going to see up here is a collection, I have to change this brand.
No, it's fine.
Is a collection of ideas that we met one day, and Dr. Clendenning said, okay, each of you are just going to think individually, pros and cons with early release and late start. Anything, any consideration that you think we need to look at, analyze, and consider moving forward. And so we put all these ideas together. There are 2 pages here, 2 slides of different things that came out of that. And I learned a lot as a high school teacher about, the elementary teachers and their considerations, CBIS. I'm used to doing this, so I knew what the concerns were. I knew what the benefits were too, so I'm obviously very much behind it. So there were lots of different ideas that we looked at and then recognized patterns in those ideas.
Yeah, no, the same. As an elementary school teacher, I looked through that lens at elementary level. So this was a great way to kind of get everyone's voice heard. We looked at the student point of view, teacher. It was good hearing from a high school point of view, and it was also good to hear about how it was successful doing delayed start.
And I think, maybe I'm wrong, but this may have been the point that we realized, what does common planning time mean? Because our needs at the high school look much different from, the elementary. Yeah. So this was eye-opening, an eye-opening step for us.
Instruction time became another significant part of this because, as you know, in elementary, as they get going, they're required to have a 90-minute reading block based on that. And that was kind of an aha at the secondary because they don't have to have that. And so as we started looking at, if we take a late arrival to school, that 90 minutes gets squished. What's that look like? So that became the conversation around what does common mean. So excellent point by Mrs. Hart. Pew Matrix.
So as we got around to looking at solutions, what we did is we pulled the criteria that we developed during our problem statement phase and compared the late arrival early release options, and then a early release and late arrival option against the do nothing option. So each one of those criteria, from common time, no loss of instruction time, no loss of prep time, and within contract time, and then supervision and safety, we scored each one of those criteria against the do nothing option, and narrowly arrived at the conclusion that the combined option of an early release and a late arrival split by grade level was the best option. And I think it was the discussion that happened not only with the affinity diagram, but with this exercise that kind of led us to the conclusion that we needed to consider what common time means to us, and that really what is workable and good at the elementary level is not exactly what's workable and good at the secondary level. And so we came at what we felt like was a really good solution.
Yep. So in regard to the failure mode analysis, talked with Jeff one morning. I woke up at 2 a.m. and thought, we're still missing something. And it was, each of them had strengths and weaknesses. But to do a FEMA for all three was going to be an arduous task and not really provide us still the answer, because you saw in the pew how close the answers were. So Jeff and I talked and drilled down to just, let's do the one that stands out as the most significant right now. And so that's the FEMA that we actually took on in our study. And you'll see from this, and it's probably easier to see on your screens, but after moving all the way through our FEMA, student growth and achievement became the number one thing we need to make sure we can address our action plan. In addition, you'll look at the loss of pay in terms of our support staff and some contract issue things, which also played a part in our conversation. And then PLC productivity. How do we ensure that our teachers are really moving forward in that? And that's going to be one of the benchmarks that you'll hear about as we come back in a year from now to give a snapshot of how we're doing. And then the last one, safety for our kids, especially in terms of Cub Care. As you all know, we do provide our own Cub Care after school, so that will be a way that we'll be able to provide a safe learning environment for those parents that may not be able to get back with us and get home in time to have their kids, so they'll be able to stay with us in an environment that is safe and secure.
So Dr. Clendenning, before you leave on that one, so a couple of line items there. The one is around the assistance. You mentioned that loss of pay, right? So when you're making a change, those are the people, if they're still negative, are going to torpedo your change. They're going to be the negative change agents, right? They're not going to embrace it. And those are the folks that we've got to convince to come over. So how did the group talk about that? What were your thoughts around how are you going to get them engaged to make sure that they don't come away that this is a negative against them, that there really is the benefit?
Well, our assistants, I think is mostly who are speaking here in support staff, hourly folks. We can be flexible with their time as we are currently and make sure they don't actually lose any hours. So on that day, we might bank a little bit of time or pay a little less on that day and then a little more the day before when they're with kids longer. So it was something we wanted to account for and predict it could be an issue, but it's one that's very easily solved. And really in our methods that we do now, we already have it solved as well.
Okay. Thank you.
So looking at the things that we're looking to ask for your approval, we still need to work on the communication plan. And one of the things that I've put in here is that will be delivered to community in May. It's on an action item tonight. I would ask you to think about that and maybe table it for 30 days. We've talked this as a team. We doesn't say that it's not going to happen because I think there are a lot of reasons why you see this, but I'll give you a chance to think about it in terms of the board. In terms of, but if you feel comfortable, this team did a great job of thinking of everything through on this problem. I feel confident coming to you today and recommending that we do an early release for grades K through 6 in a late arrival for the middle school and high school beginning in August of 18-19. One of the things that we do know, the very first day of school next year is a Wednesday. We would not be doing this the very first day of school. We will do it the first full week of school, which will allow us, or actually 5 days before it would start, like a normal cycle. So those are things for us to look at. Also, in terms of the implementation plan, we'll be taking May, June, July to get that out to everybody, make it very public, and then looking at benchmarking for the students, both in NWA and PLC time. So with that, I present to you the combined project. One thing Darren asked the other day was, would you have come up with the same answer without the project? I'm probably stealing this question he's going to ask me, but the answer is no. The easy part for all of us would be, let's just do one size fits all. And let's make the high school move, or let's make everybody go early. And you know what? Through the Six Sigma process, we realized the very best answer for us was to split them. Logistically, it provides the most sense for our buses and for our students and teachers, it provides the most sense. So with that, we'll take any questions. I do want to publicly thank the committee. They spent a lot of time, energy, and effort talking to their colleagues and also coming to meetings after school to make this thing happen.
Well, one, thank you for what you did. And I guess for me, if you've been at these meetings at all, you probably recognize that if I understand the process by which you made a decision, then I can support your decision, and I clearly understand your process. So thank you for doing that. I guess the real question I have is, what did you learn in this project? I'm just a couple of you. Is there anything you learned throughout this project that was different than what you thought before?
I'll speak on that because the other question you had there, as far as is this the solution you would have thought? Because when I came to the table, I was like, oh, this is going to be easy. We're going to do an early release on Wednesdays. You know, so that's what everybody else is doing. So then talking with teachers from the high school and taking their perspective, taking bus drivers' perspectives, parents' perspectives, and putting all of those things together was really eye-opening to me. And considering the classified staff who works 5.5 hours a day, and then on Wednesday, we don't have that. And if we did a late start, how does that affect breakfast and lunch? So many factors when trying to make one 45-minute change to a schedule was eye-opening to me. That was the most learning experience I had.
And I think we've all heard that it takes a village, but I think through this you truly realized, you know, we had to think about, does that change lunch schedules? Does that change recess schedules? If so, how does that affect those people? Like I said, for high school, it is definitely easier for them to have a late arrival, but they don't have the transportation issue that we have. We have children that go home after school by themselves, or they have to be brought to school. They can't drive. So you talk about the bus drivers and everything with that. So I think for me, you know, it takes everybody to work together, but when you really sat down and went through all the data, it was incredibly obvious how much we depend on all the different parts to function and to communicate to get it all done.
One of the things that I think we all noticed as teachers was that, in general, all teachers across the board, which we all know this already, are putting in tons and tons of hours, way more than our contract time. And all of our buildings are dealing with this in a different way that we were unaware of. But PLC is a priority to all of our teachers in Franklin. So in order to do that, some of us, like in the elementaries, our specials teachers are covering our classes so we can have PLC time. But that makes it so our specials teachers don't get to collaborate. They don't get time themselves. In other buildings, they are giving up their prep, which is then against our handbook that is signed between FCTA and Dr. Clendenning. And each building is dealing with this in a different way. Some are staying after contract time and banking time. They'll stay late for 30 minutes on a day and then are allowed to leave early one day, but we know that doesn't happen. They don't leave early. So they're just giving up their own time on a constant basis. So this allows teachers to be able to have that time, be able to have that time to collaborate without a coach having to take off and run to practice, or this teacher having an appointment because we're after contract time anyways and having to leave. This gives us time that is set aside for us to be able to really have that true collaboration.
I think what you guys did is great, because I mean, it's very complicated, right? I mean, you probably all kind of came to the, initial conclusion pretty quickly, but it's nice to have all the data around logistic, how you're going to go about this. The question I actually have is, what are you going to, the time? Have you looked at how you might use that time differently than you had in the past? Maybe it doesn't look, maybe it's exactly the same. I don't know. Maybe it's different for each building. I don't know.
Custer Baker doesn't have it. We currently use our prep time.
Prep time.
So
then how, is there been any conversations about how to use that time?
We collect data based on NWEA scores, formal assessments that we do. I'm loud, I'm a teacher. Informal assessments that we do within units of study. And so now we're going to be able to actually get together and look at that data, and then we can go into interventions where we can place kids in appropriate intervention with different classrooms. So for Custer Baker, we're going from pretty much nothing outside of what we give our prep time for every day to something that we're going to be able to really run with.
At the middle school, sorry. At the middle school, our current arrangement doesn't allow for administrators to be a part consistently of PLC meetings. And so that'll be the big change for us, is that we'll be able to be a part, which is important.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know how much you've heard from high school teachers or high school administrators, how much we rely on PLCs, but I've had so many new teachers say to me, I can't imagine doing this without the support of my team. And, 20 years ago, I wish I would have had a PLC to work with. But, as new teachers, 20 years ago, you slogged through that on your own and you sought out the most experienced teacher and hoped that they would help you. And this is a built-in system of a mentoring program where you are learning about best practices. And as an experienced teacher, I'm learning, the new ideas, the new practices that are coming out of the schools as well. So, I have had a wonderful experience with that. And so I did not realize that CBS did not have that same experience. And that it really bothered me. So I was really happy to be a part of this team.
Okay, any other comments?
Well done. This has been a long journey. I don't remember when you started PLCs in high school, 5 years ago. And I remember the conversation, coming out of the corporate world, said, well, collaboration, I did that on a daily basis. It was just common nature to me, and it was a little eye-opening for me that you didn't have that structured opportunity. And so we did an experiment, and the experiment works. And I guess for me, and it's really a comment to Dr. Clendenning and to my peers, if I understand the process by which you made a decision, then I can support your decision. I don't feel like I need to wait another month, but I've heard this twice, so I'll defer to the rest of the team here. But you had a sound process to make a good decision, and I'm not one who can. I can't challenge your decision because I'm not in your world. I can challenge your process, and the process you used was very sound.
Okay. So
thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
I'll move for approval.
Does the public have a question?
I'm sorry?
Does the public have a question?
The time for that was at the beginning. Yeah, that's what that time's for. Okay. Okay. It's been moved for approval. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, team. Good job. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you. Good job. Good job. Thanks. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and stay up here because we're going to go to the next agenda item, I believe. And that is looking at the Lancer BB feasibility study. A couple of things resonated today that made me think this is even more important. One, you heard about our energy audit and talking about we've done a lot of things over the last several years to reduce or avoid cost. It's time now, though, with our district projecting to grow, to have an expert come in and do a feasibility study. So we have talked with Mr. Terry Lancer and his firm to present a study for us. We've done this back in the 90s. We had a study completed, and it'll be done in 3 phases. One phase, Terry's team will come in and look at each of the buildings, and they will give it a rating scale from a red to a green, and he'll go into detail about that. The second phase, he'll talk to stakeholders, both teachers and community about what does instruction look like now and in the future for our buildings and where we're headed. And then the third phase will be coming back to a small group and projecting out places and opportunities that we may grow. Obviously, we're a long, skinny district, 112 square miles. A lot of our schools are in one place, and that's in the city town of Franklin. But we also know we need school on the west side. So what does that look like? So we've asked him to give his best advice and opinion on what that looks like. This contract is for $10,000, and he will also be bringing a firm with him to do the HVAC and electrical engineering side of that as he studies that. And Terry is here tonight, but I know that in our work session, you had a chance to hear from him. Mr. Mercer and I did follow up and had about a 60-minute conversation with Mr. Lancer about some opportunities that we want to make sure that we get addressed, and I believe we feel comfortable in those. They've been addressed, and so with that, I'd recommend that we engage in a contract with Lancer and Beebe for a facility study for the 18-19 school year.
I hear motion. It's been moved for approval. Is there any discussion?
I have a couple questions.
I do too. Go ahead. Go ahead. All right.
So first of all, let me say I'm supportive of doing this, but I have a couple of questions. Terry, in terms of when I look at, I want to understand a little bit better what the deliverable is, and for the amount of money you got with the number of facilities that we got, with not a lot of detail embedded in there, not a lot of hours embedded in that fee. So can you give me an understanding of what the deliverable is going to be for this initial study?
Sure, Darren, I'd be glad to. There's probably more hours embedded in that than there is fee. I'll say that up front. So we plan to do a detailed assessment of each of your facilities, meaning that we will bring a team of architects and engineers, and we will actually go through every facility that you own. We will be looking at every aspect from the sites of the building, the exteriors. We'll be starting out looking at security and safety issues. We'll be looking at site circulation. We will then look at the facades of the buildings, what kind of shape they're in as far as your exterior walls. We'll then move inside the building. We'll look at not only the office areas and how they're located to the entrances. We'll also look at the classrooms to see what shape the classrooms are in. We'll be looking at all the specials as far as gymnasiums and cafeterias. So we'll do a complete facility assessment on each building. The deliverable that you'll receive from that will be in the form of a report that will be bound into binders. And so for each of those areas on each building, we will give each item a score. As David said, being if it's below 60, then it's a failing score. 90 to 100 means that it's probably in really good shape, and you don't need to look at doing anything for the next 10 years. We will also meet with all the stakeholders. So we'll meet with different staff in each building and hear what they think about. Do they see any shortcomings on how they deliver curriculum and instruction, and what might be needs for the future to help them as we look how we deliver education today, which it's a very changing environment. So we're going to look at maybe the need for more collaboration spaces, more breakout areas, more flexible educational areas, and these will also be included in our report. So the deliverable you'll get in the end will be a report of all these findings with this matrix. From there, we're going to look at other needs. So if we find that we look for some growth in one building or another building. We'll look at perhaps how classrooms could be added onto that building for the future. If we're looking at growth coming to the school corporation, provide those plans. And then at the end of the study, what we're going to do is we're going to put cost associated with each things. So if we find that, say you have masonry issues at one school, we need to look at some tuck pointing or brick repair, then we'll say, okay, a cost for that might be $40,000, and this might be something that we recommend doing in the next 1 to 3 years to stop any water penetration. And then we'll look at future costs for things maybe in the future. Again, if we're looking at growth that might come 3 to 5 years, we'd be looking at, okay, here's how you might be able to expand this facility if it's needed in this area, and then put a cost associated with it. So in the end, you'll come up with a very detailed report that you can really use for planning out for the next 10 years of the school system. So I'd say, again, probably a lot more work and man hours than probably the fee has included in it. So did I answer your question there?
Yes.
Right. No, I'm good. You answered many of the questions I just had. Those around deliverables.
I'm just going to be really transparent, Terry. I don't want to put you on the spot. And this is maybe rhetorical than it is a direct question, but when I see the fee and knowing what I know about your industry because I'm in it, there's not a lot of hours baked into that. And I'm just, again, I'm not advocating to my peers that we go pay a bunch more money. But I want to make sure that you're delivering a quality product to us, and knowing that there's more hours baked into a fee than what's there. I'm just cautious about what the quality of the deliverable is going to be based upon what I know about this industry. So I'm not opposed to moving forward. But I just want to make sure that we're all singing on the same sheet of paper here with regard to what you're going to deliver for the amount of money that we're going to pay you.
Darren, I can fully appreciate your comments, and one thing that I would hope you make you feel a little bit better is knowing that in the very recent past, we performed a feasibility study for Nineveh Hensley Jackson United Community Schools just south of here for a similar fee, delivered a similar report for them. We're currently engaged by Center Grove Community Schools doing a very similar report. We shared some of those reports and what they look like and the information that's provided into them to your administration staff. And I've actually heard that David's done a really good job and followed up with some of those school superintendents too, to make sure that we delivered on our promises there. And hopefully you heard good things from the other surrounding school superintendents. But we do these studies all over the state of Indiana for school corporations, and we definitely put a lot more effort into a study than is the hours would show with that fee. And I think that we've always delivered on that promise. And I welcome, if there's anybody that Dr. Clendenning hasn't talked to, that he call them up and just check us out, make sure we deliver on our promises.
Okay. It's been moved. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is payment of claims and clearing accounts resolution. Mr. Mercer?
Yeah, this is a lot of the ordinary for things that we historically do. Some alterations have been made at the trust level, our insurance trust, and according to what I understand, we're the only school corporation in the trust that does not pay our premiums basically by the 5th of each month. We have historically waited until we've collected from our third-party vendors the the benefit dollars that are attributable to folks and/or have collected those premiums ahead of time, which is technically the right way to do that. However, that's no longer going to work for our trust. So what we've been asked to do really are three things. Make sure that we pay the premiums due to the medical trust by the 5th of the month. In doing so, that means, which is the second feature of this resolution, that the clearing accounts that we have set up have all historically been cleared out at the end of every month. That's not going to be able to happen because we're going to carry forward balances that are still owed, despite the fact that we have in effect prepaid the medical trust for the premiums due. And then the third feature, as I've already mentioned, is that we're going to be prepaying on items that we haven't received the dollars for from our vendors. Example, our VIBA dollars that come in from a third party, which are attributable to our retirees. We don't typically get those until at or about the middle of the month. And so we're going to be paying those ahead of time. And so the trust leadership has requested that we make this alteration. We do have the authority through the State Board of Accounts to pay things ahead of time, and you passed a resolution a few years ago that allows us, and me specifically, to make those requests on a daily, weekly basis as needed. And so we're simply formalizing an agreement that we've been asked to adhere to by our medical trust. I would be happy to answer any questions, but devoid of any, we would ask permission for you to take action on this tonight.
Are there any questions?
No questions.
Move for approval. It's been moved for approval. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Mr. Mercer,
we do have.
We did both of those in the same?
No, we just did the first one. We've got one more to go. We do have a request tonight to use emergency appropriation out of capital projects. As you'll recall, we do budget this every year, but we have to come to you with this resolution for approval. Mr. Sewell is going to fill in the blanks on what the $70,000 would pay for.
I wrote to you in Friday notes about 4 projects, and I want to talk to you about substituting a different project for one of those. First one, the football stadium here at the high school has had significant challenges with the public address system that makes it difficult for us to get commentary to a game, but more importantly, the safety messaging to the people that are in attendance. The stands area in particular does not have good coverage by the PA system. We feel like that's something that needs to be fixed. The scoreboard that serves that stadium is also aging and unreliable, so we'd like to replace that. The PA system in the natatorium is similarly not effective and needs some updates and some repairs due to the chlorine environment. It's been very hard on those electronics. And then in the football locker room, there's a floor coating that's coming off the floor. It's made the floor very slippery, and we have a safety concern there. As I went through our capital projects list this week and thought more about our priorities, the other item that kind of rose to the top of the list that I had not previously mentioned was our walking trail here around the high school campus has never been seal coated. It is deteriorating, and that's something I think we need to get ahead of earlier in this year rather than later as we consider some of the capital projects we're considering for later this year. I really feel like that one needs to be done as soon as we can get that arranged. So I'd like to substitute that for the natatorium project, or maybe in addition to, I may be able to save some costs and get all 5 of those things done. So I'd like some flexibility there.
Okay. Would anyone like?
Yeah, so why did you pick that particular one to potentially trade off versus one of the others, you think?
Again, that one was one where the pavement, the asphalt that makes up that trail has never been seal coated. It's 10 years old now. There's weeds and things coming up through that. As that deteriorates and breaks up, we could have potential safety concerns with people walking on that surface. And we really feel like to avoid larger expense with more extensive repairs, we need to get that one done. I was anticipating we might have funding for that through another channel, but I really, to make sure that we have the funding to do that, I felt like we need to include that in this appropriation. The natatorium, I'm optimistic that with a little bit of contingency funding we've included in that $70,000 amount, we can do some of the equipment replacement that's urgent to make that system more effective in the near term. And then I may have to do a second phase if I can't quite squeeze all of the funding out of that. But I anticipate being able to do the majority of all 5 of those items for that $70,000 amount.
And I think we talked about the cost for those 2 projects too, matching up.
Yeah, the costs do match up. They're both $9,000 estimates. So
The only thing that's going through my head, and it's really your decision, but is, like, for example, the communications in both facilities can be safety.
Yeah.
The walkway could be safety, but I don't know about the scoreboard. That doesn't.
Yeah, that's true. That's
I don't
more of
see that as
an
more of a
aesthetic
safety.
Yeah, it's not. I think the feeling on in the outdoor venue was if we have a weather alert that causes us to need to evacuate that facility, the only way to get that done is through our public address system or word of mouth. Whereas
I agree, yeah. And
the building is a little bit
floor
easier.
in the athletic, wherever it was, it's like it's a safety. I just don't see the scoreboard. To me, if I were looking
That's
at
true.
them, that's probably one I would probably take off the list just from that's just my thought.
Okay.
I think a couple items. We would have remaining, if this were to be approved tonight, about $55,000 in emergency allocation to get through the remainder of the year. And of course, an auditorium is used throughout the year, but most probably not in a big way until a little bit later. I think we can get that done. The one item on the scoreboard, it has failed multiple times. The least, or the most recent of which was right before the first track meet. And they have patched and parted that thing together about as much as they can with I think just hopeful that we may be able to get that done before some of the big track meets come yet this year. So that was what factored into it.
Your call. Are there any other questions? Would anybody like to make a motion?
I move for approval.
It's been moved for approval. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Mrs. Brown-Nally?
Last month, I brought to you just a few minor changes to the elementary handbook, mostly in regard to food services and health and wellness policy. We did make one additional change in talking to the elementary principals this month. Instead of having specific amounts for student book rental, we'd like to take that out of the handbook. It will be on our website, but because we've added high ability, there's not one set student amount per grade level anymore, and this becomes very confusing to parents when it's in writing here in the handbook. So you can see the wording there is we'll have printed bills or printed sheets for parents that will be very specific to their children based upon the program in which they're in every year. So that is the only additional change from last month.
Okay.
So just asking for your approval for the elementary handbook.
Okay, it's been moved for approval. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Next item is under discussion items. Mr. Sewell, the bus conduct software.
So I wanted to bring to your attention a need we have in our bus conduct process. We currently have our bus drivers fill out a quadruplicate form that's about half a sheet of paper, and it's got little tiny areas to describe bus discipline, and it's difficult to use, and the copies don't transfer very well. And the transportation department does not get feedback on those bus discipline incidents very effectively or efficiently. And we thought this is a process ripe for improvement through an electronic process. We looked at 3 different options there. We looked at the PowerSchool software that we already use for discipline within our school system. We looked at a Google form that Mr. Kirby had prototyped for us last year. And then we looked at this busconduct.com product that was recommended to Mr. Dickinson. As we consider those options, the bus conduct option for a very reasonable cost rose to the top in terms of its capability and its ability to address some of the challenges that we've experienced in that. For that reasonable fee of $14.70, we feel like it's a good fit for us, and we recommend it to the corporation as our bus conduct solution.
So how does that actually work? Like if I were a bus driver and would I go?
So we would after some upfront setup work where our student rosters will be uploaded with their student IDs and everything that allow a bus driver to select a student from a drop-down list, so we're positively identifying the right.
Like at the end of
they would do
come
that
back to the
garage.
And then there'd be a computer sitting, if you will.
We'd use our Chromebooks. They'd be able to log into this website, fill out a description of what the behavior or conduct issue was. That would trigger a routing process. They would go to a building administrator or a dean of students, and then that would trigger the follow-up steps. And then there would be a return message that described for transportation what if there was any discipline or follow-up that occurred. So for example, if a student's suspended from the bus, it would inform the transportation department that student's been suspended for 1 day, 2 days, whatever the case may be. And just provide that closed loop on communicating, coordinating on that bus discipline issue. The other thing that we liked about that tool is it allowed a description of the incident to be tailored to the parents. So that it would help us to craft and automatically generate a communication to the parents that described what happened, maybe in a little less graphic detail than what we might put in our records. But it just, again, a good solution that helped us make that process, take it from a paper form into an electronic format that then helps improve our communication.
Makes sense.
Okay, so, but this isn't under action items. So this is
just for your consideration this month. I'd be glad to answer any questions or.
Like around training, have you thought about what that might look like to implement?
The user interface is very straightforward,
okay.
Minimal setup, and that was one of the things that helped kind of float that one to the top in terms of solutions. Okay. The other thing we wanted to do is keep this workload off of Mr. Kirby with he developed a very nice solution to give it some of the extra bells and whistles we were after. Was going to cost him some more hours and an ongoing obligation to support it. And at the price that we were able to look at this bus conduct software, we thought we could use Doug's time more effectively in other areas. And so we're just recommending this as a solution. And we felt like the training overhead is pretty light too. It's very straightforward.
And so you renew this every year? I mean,
yep,
you have to renew it or it automatically renews?
I don't know the answer to that question. I'm sure we could set it up either way. But there is that first year setup fee of $595. That's the student roster import process and just kind of getting our routing processes set up. And then once that is in place, then $875 or thereabouts as you incur minor cost increases will be the annual fee we'd expect to pay.
So would there be a setup fee though with the new students coming on each year that they would charge on top of that $875?
I think that's rolled into the initial setup fee. I think the bulk of that work is the routing processes.
Okay.
The student roster is a pretty straightforward import from one database into their database. So we don't anticipate that being the bulk of that time or effort.
So that annual fee, is that one license seat for that application, or is it a?
It's based on the ridership that you have on your buses. So it says the average daily ridership you reported is up to 4,000 students. So their fee scales to how many riders are on your bus system.
But I'm thinking more of that bus driver, and then what schools, what would they need? So is there a license that we're going to have to cover at each one of the schools to get that data?
No,
how are we going to transfer that?
This will give us access to that and whatever logins we need to operate that system.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Next item, under Board Administrative Comments, online registration update, Mr. Sprout.
For the second year in a row now, we are going to do the online registration process. So this is mainly communication out to parents in the community. Last year, they said the first year that we did online registration, we'll get about 50% participation. We hit about 54. And so this year we'll hit about 3/4 if everything goes well. But the online registration process will be simpler this year. Initially, when we began the process last year, we had all the parents enter in the data for emergency contacts, address, and this year will be much easier. They'll just verify that information is correct. So this is just a plea for parents to help assist. They'll start getting communications via email and the phone calls to ask for their update of information.
Thank you. Thought Exchange.
Yes, been having a conversation about how to reach our community. As you know, our guiding principle on communication asked that we do it in a timely manner. So we looked at several vendors. We came up with Thought Exchange, which we approved last board meeting. So I've asked Robin to come up here and just give a real quick snapshot of what's going to take place, because later this month, we're going to have our very first Thought Exchange with our community.
Yes, so for those of you who are not familiar with Thought Exchange, on the left side, really illustrates why we partnered with them and what they offer. Our initial exchange is what they call a weather report, and really it's just a check-in with the community. Our main question is going to focus around what are we doing well, and what areas of improvement do you see that we can make. We'd also like to gauge how well the community knows who we are in reference to our guiding principles. And internally, we will also be using this product for our 360 surveys. So each year, staff around the district get the opportunity to fill out a 360 survey on Dr. Clendening and the building principals. New this year, they will have that opportunity to survey the other 4 members of the administrative leadership team, as well as other members of cabinet. So the timeline, it's coming up quickly and it's really exciting. We will go live with the survey Tuesday, April 17th at noon, and that will end Monday, April 30th. So between now and next Tuesday, it's really about educating our internal staff and community as to what's coming. Between those times, Thought Exchange will communicate on our behalf. A couple of reminders, but then we'll also utilize videos, social media, our website, newsletters, and so on to remind people to take part in this survey. Their team will start analyzing on May 1st, and then we'll get to the discovery phase of the project May 21st. So a little bit about how it works. First, you're going to share your thoughts. You're going to answer the question and put your thoughts out there. Secondly, you'll go back through, and people's thoughts that you kind of identify with and agree with, you can star in agreement. And then lastly, they will provide a website where everyone can see what happens.
So initially, we will invite participants. Thought Exchange will send out an introductory email to all of our students, parents, staff, and the community members whose email addresses we have. For those email addresses that we don't have for the community or parents that may not check that email quite as frequently, the link will also be available on our website and social media sites, newsletters, typical methods of communication. We also have some staff members who don't really love electronics, so paper apps can be made available, and then we can put that into the system for analysis once the window closes. So when we begin the exchange, this is what you'll see. People can skip that step, or they can take a little tour through Thought Exchange. This is where they're also going to have the opportunity to create an account or not. Both methods, they still assure you you're anonymous, but by creating an account, you can stop and come back to it if you don't complete it all in one time. So moving forward, you'll have a welcome. You'll notice right here, that's what our welcome could look like. They do remind you to be polite and respectful. One of the great things about this company is they have moderators on the account. So they are moderating to make sure that no profanity, no personal attacks on people or groups. Otherwise, the comment is never seen, and you don't really want to waste your comment. Next, we will be creating a quick 30 to 60 second intro with Dr. Clendenning. This is the University of Victoria, and Dr. Clendenning and I both liked how brief his message was. Do you want to watch it?
We'll leave it to them.
The last pages tell us about you. Again, it is anonymous, but we want to get those demographics so that they can give us the best info possible. This is just a brief screenshot about what it looks like. So those are real live comments, and then people have gone through and starred them, and then at the end, they'll be ranked. Just because one comment gets starred more than another doesn't mean that it is shown to the viewer more. It still cycles through just like any other comment. After the exchange, they create this website for us, and they keep our branding in mind when they create that. So the end user won't realize that they have left. If you want to look through this on your own time, this photo is linked and kind of walks you through what those results look like, starting with the question all the way down to who answers and how. So they've got your district, students, and schools. They can also drill down even further for the end user and really take a look through the comments as well as how they were ranked. The most annoying part about taking a survey is never finding out what people said. So we really want the community to understand that we are listening, and then here's what we're going to do with your data. Any questions?
I do. Who owns the data? So once we finish the survey, who owns that?
We will own the data.
So this is great for future projects?
Yes.
These are great voices that we don't want to lose?
Yes.
Okay.
It would have been kind of cool to use it for the collaboration survey.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Next item is calendar. Dr. Clendenning.
Yeah, there are just 5 items for us to be mindful of in our calendar. Want to hit end of the year recognition dinner is May the 7th. Hope you can come. Remember, we honor retirees as well as teacher of the year, support staff of the year. We just announced those, so they'll be shared the next board meeting. And then our admin retreat is again looking at traveling to Bloomington on the 7th and 8th with our teachers. The board, we need to get together though, because we talked about doing quarterly another work session. And on this one, we would be looking at continuing the conversation about the fiduciary matters. Jeff and I just went to a workshop today talking about the new budgeting process for 2019, that you'll actually have a board resolution coming up in the months ahead, that we want to make sure that that's clear to everybody, because it will be your responsibility to move forward and vote on that. So those are things coming in the next few weeks.
Okay, thank you. Next item would be for public comments. So at this time, that could be anything that was on the agenda or any other item that you would like to make a comment on. Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Before we go, I'd like one question. Sorry.
Yes.
How did the Google Summit?
Google Summit, Matt is a rock star and his team's a rock star. We had over 500 people in attendance, and Matt came up here and sing his own praises, but he's a humble person, so I will do some of it for him. We partnered with the National Guard as well as the Ed Tech team, and the opening 10 or 12 minutes were the most powerful that you would see, because you could see what STEM does in the National Guard. So Matt did a great job of orchestrating that. Doug Corliss put on another fine show. We actually had bombs bursting in the air. We almost, it was just really amazing. We had one of our former graduates rappel down from the roof. And then on Saturday, we had a helicopter land in the parking lot. And there were a lot of pictures and opportunities for people to see. I actually went to one of the sessions with the principal of Lake Station, a school district up in the region. They have about 3,300 students. The principal is in the National Guard. And the great thing that they're doing with the National Guard is the new pathways. They're actually creating a pathway for students. And we talked about that, so I've sent some information on to Rita and to Steve about some ideas. So it was a great opportunity, but Google, phenomenal. Keynote speakers are probably the best we've had in our journey with them. And I know that Matt's wanting some sleep, but he did a phenomenal job with that.
It was an exciting opportunity. We had the individual that's responsible for the entire Indiana National Guard come and address the teachers across Indiana and thank them for their efforts. And so that was a pretty humbling experience. One of the things that we did do this year differently is we provided a student summit. So there were 100 middle schoolers that got to experience what we did on a Saturday and Sunday during their school day on Friday. So that was a unique opportunity for them. They were able to kind of debrief about that, and it was full of smiles and excitement. I think the presenters enjoyed it just as much as the students did. So we look forward to potentially continuing to provide that opportunity for our students too.
I heard lots. I kind of knew the answer, but I got to hear it. So great job.
I'll tell you that today that the Google folks told him that their presenters from all over the country fight to come to the
Oh, really? That's so cool.
Google conference.
Yeah.
So it's a
Great
great
job to
opportunity.
you and the rest of your team.
It is definitely a team effort. There's many people engaged in trying to get everything set up and configured. So applause to everyone.
Well
Thank
done.
you.
Okay. Entertain a motion. Thank you.